Hi, I'm Lorinda Schrammel. Bio's up there. You know, hairstyles change. That's what I'll say. I'm excited to be here with you all today. We're going to talk a little bit about Generation Z. Looks like we have some Gen Z. Hey, Chris, how are you? Got some Gen Zers in the room, I'm going to guess. Yes, you are. How about that? And maybe some other generations too. We will get into that. My name is Lorinda Schrammel. I am with Talent Development here at OSU, and I'm excited to get to be a part of this program this year. So I do a lot of training here on campus, but my training is interactive. So please feel free to ask questions, to insert comments. I'd love to hear your comments. As a Gen Zer or as someone that works with folks who are Gen Z, I would love to hear your comments, your questions, and we will have time at the end for Q&A, but that doesn't mean we can't do it throughout. So I look forward to interacting with you all today. Let's see a little bit about Gen Z. So who is Gen Z? Well, I think to understand Gen Z, we have to kind of see where they come from. So we'll do a little bit about each of the generations that are in the workplace. We have another generation that's before the four I'm going to show you. But we have to understand, it'll help us kind of understand where Gen Z came from. All right, so the first one is baby boomers. And you're welcome to raise your, oh, yay, that's right. Gen Zers, born, and I will tell you, if you look up generations online, if you Google that, you may see a little variation in the years for some of these, but these are all pretty close. All right, so born between 1946 and 1964, and just some thoughts about baby boomers. So they really were the first workaholics. And if you think a little bit about baby boomers, we'll see some numbers here in a few minutes. Baby boomers are workaholics because they were trying to outdo the millions of other baby boomers for a smaller number of jobs. And so they are used to putting in the hours because they were trying to compete with all the other baby boomers in the workplace, right? So that crowded environment spurred this competitive nature among baby boomers. So you may see a lot of them do have a competitive nature about them, because that's just who they are. That's where they were raised. They were competing with others. A little rebellious, you baby boomers, right? Kind of like to go at your own and try to kind of conquer the world. And they have a drive to advance social and civic causes. If you think about what was happening in those early baby boomers, we were coming off World War II when they were born. And so we're trying to kind of reconfigure how we were going to operate in the world. And then as we moved into Korea, the Korean War, and then Vietnam, and then we had a lot of social change that was going on in the 50s and 60s. So that was kind of the environment they were raised in. So that's kind of a little bit about baby boomers. We'll see why we're talking about them in just a moment. Gen X followed baby boomers. That's 1965 to 1980 is their birth years. Woohoo, right? Gen Xers. A little bit about them. Profound economic, social, and political change happened in their lifetime. And usually what we notice about generations is things that happen in the formative years really kind of set the pace for who they became. And that's kind of what happens for all of us. Even in our families, what was happening in our families sets the course for who we are in a family mode. But if we think about what's happening in the world, it kind of sets us up for how we operate within the world. A lot of folks that are Gen X were known as latchkey kids because this was one of the first generations that had both parents working outside the home. And oftentimes we came home from school, we had latchkey because we had a key around our neck to get into our home until a parent came home from work. And so there's a lot of latchkey kids, which then moved us into wanting to be very independent, very self-reliable because we had to be. We had to be because there wasn't anyone home to help get us our snack or get us started to do our homework, things like that. And then influenced by media and pop culture. If you are Gen X, I bet you can tell me what year MTV started, right? Yeah, we were probably in high school. I'm trying to not give it away. Probably in junior high or high school, depending on your age. But MTV started, and then we started to see a lot of pop culture. Entertainment Tonight started for us in those formative years. And so that's kind of what we have grown up with. And then we have our millennials, a few millennials in the room. 1981 to 1995 birth years, they're the always-on generation. And I think we'll know why. They are the most sleep-deprived generation, according to the National Sleep Foundation. They are used to having some kind of electronic device attached to them, and they are always connected. Instantaneous everything. They are used to getting things instantaneous because this is really when our society ramped up that we wanted to know everything quickly and immediately. But millennials are really about collaboration. As much as our Gen Xers are very independent, are the group that followed us, the millennials, are very much into collaboration. They like to work in teams. They like to work on projects together. So many of them like collaboration. And then we have our wonderful group that we're going to discuss the most today, and that's our Gen Zers. Birth years 1996 to 2012. Yes, there's a whole other generation that's coming right behind you. And this is a little bit about, we're going to talk a little bit more, so not a lot of detail yet, but again, very independent group. Very family-oriented are our Gen Xers, and Gen Zers, and we'll see why momentarily. They have a digital DNA. Most of them, almost like 90% of Gen Zers, have some form of an electronic device, whether it is a phone, an iPad, or a digital platform without a laptop somewhere. So 98% of those born between 96 and 2012 have some form of a digital something or other. And then FOMO, they have a fear of missing out. They always want to know what's coming. They want to be on top of things. They don't want to miss out on anything. Everything moves very quickly. And so do they. They want the latest and the greatest because they don't want to miss out. All right? So there's the generations. Why do we talk about all of them? Because we're going to look at how they influence. So the interesting thing are, baby boomers pretty much are the parents of the millennials. All right? It's not always exactly that way, but oftentimes we can see because of that parental relationship and how the family was structured, that we can see how they affect things. So we talked about baby boomers being gone a lot, and some millennials, they kind of learned how to do everything on their own, and they did it digitally. They were very much an inventive bunch, all right? And they take that competitive nature from their parents. Same way, Gen Z has had its formative years with Gen X as parents. So I know I have 2 Gen Z children, and so they are influenced by their Gen X parents. And so it's just interesting how we can see that who your parents are and what generation they came from does influence how you behave in your generation. Everything I say today is not going to be exactly who each generation is. I hate to paint anyone with a wide brush, but it does help us to have some understanding about some of the behaviors that are associated with age groups. So you may hear some things today as a Gen Zer and say, well, that's not really me, and that's entirely possible. Your life experience has helped create who you are. But at least it helps us understand a little bit about your generation, and that helps us interact with you in a way that might be better suited to how you like things to be. I encourage you as a Gen Z to speak up if someone says, oh, you're very independent, I'll let you work on your own. I encourage you if you say, oh, no, I really prefer project work, to say those things so that we don't paint you with a wide brush. All right? All right, so let's look a little bit some more at each of these. So baby boomers, you might be thinking, why don't these kids know any better? Put down the cell phone and get to work. But if you're talking about a millennial or someone with Gen Z, they're used to having some type of appliance, if you will, attached to them. That's how they've been raised. And so it's a little bit much for us to assume that they're going to set it down just because that's not the way we like to operate. Our Gen X, I thought they'd be gone by now. We're thinking about the baby boomers. When are you going to leave the work ranks, right? We're ready to move up. Baby boomers are working longer and more years than traditional folks do. They just keep working. And if you're a Gen X hoping you get to move up into those supervisory roles, you may be waiting a while. Baby boomers, they are competitive and they're going to hang on to the bitter end, right? And so we have to think about that too, especially when it comes to organizations. If we think that we're going to start moving people up and we've got folks that are staying put, that changes the dynamics in that organization. All right, and think about that too. If you're a millennial or a Gen Z waiting for your chance to advance, you may be waiting a little bit longer if you're an organization where there's not a lot of movement because folks are staying put. And then the millennials, dude, my boss is a dinosaur, LOL. You can just see him almost sending that message to his friends, right? And millennials may think that everyone older than them are dinosaurs because maybe we don't do things as fast, maybe we don't have technology down as well. I had to get help getting my mic to work today, so how about that? And so that may be kind of a thing of they don't know quite as much as I do, at least about technology, and that may be true. But my 82-year-old mother is on an iPad and an iPhone, so I think we can do it. We can do it. If she can do it, we can all do it. Gen Z, this is what you say. You speak with emojis. And that's a little bit pushing it a little bit, and I get that. But, you guys are used to interacting in different ways. And so you like emojis, and also it's kind of how you like to interact at times. But we'll find that actually there is an assumption about Gen Z and communication that I hope to dispel today. And I'll jump into that here. All right, numbers. If we can start, I was talking about baby boomers. There were a lot of them. Yeah, it's the second largest group. They were the largest for a long time until millennials came along, and they have now bumped them out of the top spot. But this is just in population, 77 million baby boomers, and then Gen X went down to 57 million because baby boomers didn't have as many children as perhaps their parents did. Several reasons for that. A, they were too busy trying to get ahead and move up in organizations, so they didn't have as many kids, and also they didn't want to be raised in the same type of family structure with lots and lots of kids, so they had less. So there's a couple of reasons for that. Millennials, 78 million, biggest group, just by a million. And then Gen Z, you're coming on strong, 73 million. And this is just in the general population, but most of these folks are going to be in the workplace, right? So Gen Z, you're going to probably overtake in the workplace very soon as we start to see retirements from baby boomers and Gen X eventually. So let's talk about Gen Z in the workplace. There's some values of our Gen Zers that I think it's important to note because they're pretty incredible just as humans and how they bring that to the workplace. So here's some values. Folks that are Gen Z, they love variety. They are used to trying all different things, and so they like variety, even in the workplace. So if you think about that, in your workplace, if you have Gen Zers in your workplace, what type of variety is made available to them? Do they have variety in their work? Do they have variety in their assignments? What does that look like? They like to have ownership. They like to be empowered and have ownership in the work they do. Not really fond of micromanagement. I don't know who is fond of that, but they particularly like to have ownership in the work that they do. Individuality. They are a generation that has been surrounded with diversity. And so they really are one of the first generations to really say, I like every kind. I am very diverse. My friends are all different types of backgrounds, family types. And so they are very big on diversity and individuality. They see people as individuals. And so I think that's a wonderful thing about this generation because we hope that that's transformative in behavior of groups. They are a very creative and innovative bunch. Remember, they come from everything is kind of new and different every day, especially technology-wise, and so that's just something that they're used to. So they tend to be more creative and innovative because they're used to that happening around them. And then we talked about empowerment. So if we think about those values coming into the workplace, how do we help our Gen Zers in the workplace where they can express their values? What does that look like? And sometimes we just think, well, everyone comes to work, they do their job, and they go home. True. But how can we make it where folks are able to express who they are based on their generation, based on the things they like? Because I think it's important that we keep employees. Employees are very transitional these days, more than ever. So what can we do to create a position, a role for our Gen Zers where they say, this is a great fit for me, and I can see how I can use my skills here, my talents here, and I can benefit the organization. All right, so Gen Zers, if you're in the room and you want to comment on these, see if this is true for you. This is from a survey in 2015, so a few years old, but for the most part, we think some of this is mostly still accurate. Most important in choosing a job. In the survey, our Gen Zers want a friendly and an innovative environment. So the very first thing they're looking for is how we're going to interact. We want it to be friendly, but I also want opportunities to be innovative. Is the organization innovative? Or are they doing things the same way they did 10, 20 years ago? So that's what they're looking for first. Meaningful work. This group of Gen Zers are very much into social responsibility, and they want to know the work that they do matters. And I think we all want to know that, but this group particularly is used to saying, who does this benefit? And they also want it to be meaningful to them. They want to know that I get personal satisfaction from the work that I do. So they want meaningful work. There it is, high salary. We all want to get paid for the work we do, right? But it's interesting to note that it's third on our list of what's most important for our Gen Zers. And so they do want a high salary, we all do, but to them it's about environment and the meaning behind their work. And then growth opportunities. Can I grow in this organization? Or is there going to be places that I can go and do more and be more? Where all can I contribute in this organization? And I mean, we think about it, anyone who's looking for a job is looking for high salary and growth opportunities. But I think some of these other things about what's the environment like, is it innovative, maybe new for us? And then the meaningful work, that really rang a little bit true for the millennials, but it is very true for our Gen Zers. All right, I mentioned communication earlier. How do you think Gen Zers like to communicate at work? Any ideas? I'm sorry? Text? What else?
Instant message.
Instant message? I'll show you. You're going to be surprised. I was. 84% prefer face-to-face communication with their boss. Face-to-face. And we often think that it's going to be technology-based. Now, you mentioned, who mentioned using their phone for a face-to-face? You could do a FaceTime. That's still face-to-face, as we'll see momentarily. But they want to have that connection. And so face-to-face with supervisors is important to them. But then what about when they're working with their colleagues? You think it's any different? 78% prefer face-to-face communication with their peers and colleagues, too. That's a pretty high number. So I think a lot of times we assume, because this is the digital group, right? They have that digital DNA, that they prefer to use technology. And yes, they're very adept at technology. But when they want to communicate, they want to do it face-to-face. So we need to think about that, and especially as you guys are mentoring, your mentee may prefer face-to-face communication. This obviously isn't 100%, so I think that would be a good question to ask between each of you. How do you most like to communicate? How do you most like to communicate? Isn't that a question we all want to know? But there's other ways. Sometimes the person that you are communicating with is not here. We live in a global society, and so maybe they are down the street, they may be in another state, they may be in another country. And so we have to think about, what does face-to-face communication look like? And so it may be Skype, it might be instant messaging, or it may be a FaceTime type thing, but what does that look like? We want to make sure that we connect in ways that are meaningful for our Gen Zers. But that's a question we need to ask. How do you most like to communicate as a Gen Zer? Direct communication, 85% in Gen Zers reported that straightforward, constructive communication is most important. Gen Zers love feedback. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, but think about this. I've got Gen Zers in here, yes, born after 1996, before 2012. When you were going through, let's just pick high school, how did you find out your grades? Did you go into an online portal to see if your grades were up to date? You could do that at any time of the day, of night. Tried to do it when mom and dad weren't looking, right? They're used to instant information. Just that's one example. They're used to instant information. And so we want to think about, how do we give information? How do we have communication instantaneously? Because they are looking for instant feedback. They are used to that. I will speak from a Gen X perspective. I'm not used to that. We're used to the annual reviews, aren't we? Those of us that are baby boomers and Gen Xers, we're used to those annual reviews, if we get them, to tell us how we are. And it's kind of like my husband. He told me, I have to tell you I love you more than once. I told you at the wedding, if anything changes, I'll let you know. Right? It's that way in the workplace a lot, too. And so we want to think about, Gen Z is saying, tell me more, tell me now, I want to know. I'm used to having instant access to information about where I'm at. So that's a little different for us in other generations. So we have to think about, how can we create that where we can give feedback regularly. I will tell you, I also have I have a millennial that works for me, and she is kind of like our Gen Zers in that she wants constant feedback. How did this go? What do you think about this? What should we do differently? There is a lot of those checks day in and day out that at times have worn me out, but it's just different. That's just what she prefers. And so I need to come in alignment because I sure get much better interaction with her when she kind of knows where she's at. It's kind of a dashboard. She likes to make sure she knows where she's at. So Gen Zers like that too. All right, so this is kind of an interesting thought. Our Gen Zers love customization. In the workplace, what could that look like? And why do they like customization so much? So I started thinking about all the things I've seen online where you could customize. I can create my own M&Ms. I can customize those by color or what they say. I can create whatever style of tote bag that I want, colors. I can have it in the stripes one color. I can have the bag one color. I can have it say whatever I want. You can customize your car. You can get that any way you want. You can customize your shoes. That's a pretty cool thing. We're so used to shopping on Amazon where it tells us what we've looked at and what we might also consider that is in alignment with those customizations, the things that we are specifically looking for. And so our Gen Zers are used to that. This is what they've grown up with, right? So what do you think they expect in the workplace? Customization. So this is just an example. This is something I pulled off online. This is a sample business card of John Smith. His title is Marketing Expert, which I think is a pretty dandy title, right? I'd like to be an expert at something. But if John is used to customizing, would it be valid to allow John to customize his title? So maybe if I said, John, you can call yourself whatever you would like, as long as it's within the realm of marketing, right? John might choose virtuoso of marketing, right? That might be what he feels like. Instead of expert, that may not be what I like to. I don't like to be termed an expert. I want to be the virtuoso. It kind of has a different thought behind it between virtuoso and expert. So this is what I'd like you to do. So I was thinking about if I could customize my title. My title now is, what is my title? Director of Talent Development. And so I thought if I could change my title, what would it be? And this is what I came up with. I'd like to be the training ninja. That's who I would like to be. Don't we all want to be ninjas? They're kind of cool, kind of discreet, kind of mysterious. I kind of like to go in and do my training and get out of there, right? Everyone has a piece of paper in front of them. I'd like you to write down your name, like you're making a business card. What title would you like to create for yourself? I know some of you are students, and that's fine. What title do you think would be really cool to have one day? If you could create your own customized title, what would you call yourself? If I'm going to be a ninja, you can be anything you want, all right? I see some smiles around the room. That means you're thinking creatively. I like that. Okay, do we have some ideas? I'm not giving you a ton of time to be creative. You do? Yeah. Miss Greenwood, would you tell us what yours might be?
Volunteer extraordinaire.
Oh, volunteer extraordinaire. Oh, right over here too? Wow. Yeah, so I was thinking you might be speaker extraordinaire after your lovely presentation this week. I was inspired, so thank you for that. So you've got some extraordinaire in you. That's fantastic. And we've got another one over here, extraordinaire. Same thing?
I'm a school survivor.
I think that's good. I think that's good. Excellent. Right here.
This actually is my informal title. I'm the goddess of internal audit.
Ooh, goddess of internal audit. I think you should totally own that. Don't we all want to be goddesses? That's fantastic. Okay, good. Who else has some? Right here. Thank you.
Relationship genius.
Ooh, relationship genius. Doesn't that make you want to get to know him? Right? Yes. Right here.
Mrs. Make It Happen.
Mrs. Make It Happen. Wow, if you got her card, would you be like, I got some things you can make happen. Come on, I got a whole list. Let me give it to you. I love that. Probably people have told you, you're just a get her done kind of lady, right? I love it. Absolutely. Right here, Deontay.
Creator of opportunity.
Oh, creator of opportunities. Everyone's going to be coming up giving you resumes, right? Yeah, very good. Who else has one? Yes. Innovation influencer. If you're thinking in those realms, do you want to visit with her? What ideas does she have, right? She's an innovation influencer. Who else? Anyone else? Yes. Mailbox money manager. That's pretty good, right? That makes me want to know more. Nice. Isn't it fun? Isn't it creative? So I told people that work with me, I told them, I said, I don't care what you call yourselves as long as it's reasonable. And the folks that work in my department were like, "Are you serious?" And I said, "I don't care what's on your email as long as it really reflects what you do." And so my training coordinator calls herself Employee Learning Facilitator because she says that more accurately reflects what she does. I wish mine said Training Ninja. My boss said I probably shouldn't do that. And then another person that works for me has a funky HR title because we are housed in HR. But I said, well, let it reflect what you do. And so she put on hers assistant of talent development. Assistant, talent development. And that's what she does. She is our assistant. She assists us in every way, shape, or form. But her title is like HR tech or something, which is not reflective of the work she does, right? But now when people see her title, they kind of know what she does. And so I think they get to own that. If they want to change it, they can change it. We have a little chat about it as long as it passes, no ninjas. Then it's fine with me. How does it reflect the work you do? But think about what a difference something as simple as a title can mean to folks, especially Gen Z, who are so creative, so innovative, how they could own that, how it could empower something as easy as a title. So our John Smith Virtuoso of Marketing. So this is about customization. My question for you is, what else could be customized in your organization? Or even as students, what can you think could be customized in an organization for our Gen Z employees? Any thoughts on that? What could we customize? Workspace, absolutely. What does that look like? Good. What else could be customized? Work hours. Yes, this group is very specific. They like flexibility. So how could we create customized work hours? Good. What else? Sorry? Location. Yeah, do they work at home? Can they work from the coffee shop? Do they need to come into the office? So location. Do they even need to live here? Okay. What else could be customized? Job description. What does that look like? How can I customize it for the skills and talents and abilities? Right? What else? I think it's worth thinking about, especially for a group that is so used to customization. How can we make it where they are excited to come to work and they feel like their work has been customized for them? I think it's valid. And I think a lot of us are so used to having a set job description, and we have to work towards that. And being housed in HR, I'm all about job descriptions. But I think it's valid that we say, maybe times have changed, and what can we do to make it easy for people to want to come to work? Right? All right, so my Gen Zers, and I know this very familiar because my son is a gamer, and if I have any fellow gamers in here, you guys are going to have to help me because I'm not a big gamer myself, but I know that he was always trying to level up, right? When you play these games, you try to get to the next level. That's kind of what motivates you. And so we want to think about what does that look like because there's a lot of folks, even if they're not a gamer, they've played a lot of games in this particular generation, and so they are used to leveling up. And so we want to think about 75% of Gen Zers would be interested in a situation in which they could have multiple roles within one place of employment. They're used to leveling up. I do this, and I do this, and I do this. So if we think about how can we help our Gen Z that are in our organizations, how can we help them level up? But we can also do that while they're in school. How can we help them level up? You've completed this, now you get to do this. Now you get to do this. So leveling up doesn't have to wait till you graduate. How can we level up even while we're still at the university? But think about that in our organizations. How can we allow Gen Z to level up? That's something they're used to. It makes sense to them. It's verbiage they understand. And it's a motivation, right? That's why they have it in all these games. And that's why my son stayed up till all hours of the night getting to the next level. All right, our Gen Z mantra. If you want something done right, do it yourself. I'm a big teamwork extraordinaire. I'm real big on us coming together and working as a team. Everyone contributes. We do this together. I'm also Gen X, who grew up very independent, having to let myself in after school. But Gen Z is very much on independence, doing things themselves. And so this is oftentimes how they feel. I can just get this done faster than I can do it with someone else. We need to think about that. We're going to talk about challenges in a little bit. But this is a mantra then. They just are used to getting things done, which is wonderful. We want folks to get things done in our workspace. But what does that look like when we have a team component, which most organizations do? So we have to keep that in mind. They don't mind going off and doing their work independently and coming back and contributing, but they like to do things on their own, which is vastly different than the generation before them. We talked a little bit about fear of missing out, and if we think about in the workspace what that might look like, they are looking to see what other people are doing and saying, I'd like to do that. Constantly looking around to see what else is happening. I'd like to try that. Ooh, that's a new thing. I want to try that. They have this fear of missing out. They may hear someone else in the organization is doing such and such in their work. I'd like to make that a part of my work too. And so think about that. FOMO is real for Gen Z. They are used to doing lots of different things, often at the same time, and they're afraid they're going to miss out. So how can we make it where it's possible for them to do as much as possible? And if they come to you and say, is it possible? I'd like to. How can we make that happen? Oh, sorry. That's what that means. All right, so challenges. All generations have their own challenges in the workplace, but Gen Z has a few that I'd like to talk about, and a lot of it relates to what we've already discussed a little bit so far. So the first one is that need for constant feedback that I mentioned earlier. That can be a real challenge, especially if they're working with a generation that is not used to giving constant feedback. But we maybe need to think about how can I create feedback avenues that may look different than having to sit down and give a review of someone's work. How can I create that dashboard so they know where they're at? So that may take some creativity on some of the other generations, and there's nothing wrong with that. We need to stretch and try some new things. But I think it's important. I'm a big component of feedback in the workplace. We all like to know how we're doing instead of just trying to guess, right? So this particular generation has that need for constant feedback. They have been grown up that way. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just what they're used to. So how can we create that element? Think about that too as mentors. You're working with folks that may have questions, may look for your input, and they are used to getting stuff in the moment. So how can we create feedback, communication that is in the moment? That's a challenge for us. It's a challenge for Gen Z to understand other generations don't quite have that same feedback model yet. The next challenge is they want things fast. Everything fast. Why does Gen Z want things fast? Any thoughts? Pardon? Social media. If I need to look up something, I can Google it and get an answer in 0.007 seconds or whatever the stat is today. I get it fast, and I get millions of responses. What was this? Thought I heard something. Okay, so they want things fast. Do you have red tape in your organization? Do things move a little slower than 0.007 seconds? They kind of do at OSU. Kind of. A little slower than that. And maybe in your organization too. I hope you're a little faster than that. But if we have Gen Z in the workplace, they're used to everything being fast. And that can be a real challenge to let them know we're not as fast. And I hope that you don't get discouraged by how some things take time, especially if they're not used to having to navigate the red tape of many organizations. Things just take time. So that can be a real challenge for our Gen Z. Gen Zers are savvy at task switching. And you know, what was the word we used to use when people went between one task to another? Multitasking, right? We call it task switching. Because they may not finish this task and they start another one, and then perhaps they start another one. They're just switching. They're not doing all at one time. They're switching from one to another. They're savvy at that. They're good at it, but they also, there's a couple of things. They may lack prioritization because they may move from this to this because this might seem more fun right now, but in reality, this might be what needs to be prioritized. And so as savvy as they are at switching from task to task, they can go seamlessly through those. Prioritization may be an area where we need to come alongside and help them. And think about that when you're still in school. All of the Gen Zers in the room. How important it is to prioritize what's necessary to do now so that I can do this here and I can do this there. You're good at doing lots of things, thank goodness, because you have to do lots of things in your role as a student. But how do we prioritize? Some of us may need a little help in that area. Another challenge, mentioned this briefly, collaboration. You are an independent bunch, Gen Zers. And so collaboration is something that happens all the time in workplaces everywhere. So that may be more of a challenge to you. But many times Gen Zers have had to do it with schoolwork. You get to work on projects together, right? Maybe you've worked in collaboration groups in other parts of your life. But it may not come as easy to you as it might to the millennials. And some of you will probably work for a millennial. That collaboration is, they're very high in collaboration because that's what they are used to. So that could create some type of friction in the workplace when I have some millennials that are saying, let's all get together in the conference room and talk about it. And the Gen Z are saying, can we just stay in here in my office and I'm going to do my thing and then I'll just send you an email and tell you my part. So we have to think about what that's going to look like in the workplace. Because millennials are moving into lots of supervisory roles, and when we have our Gen Zers coming into the workplace, guess who they're probably going to report to in many instances? Millennials. So that may cause some friction between those two generations. And the last challenge is managing their side hustles. A lot of Gen Zers have a side hustle. That's that outside business they have. And a lot of them do it. You don't have to be in the Gen Z generation to have a side hustle, but a lot of them do. And sometimes it's just to get extra money. Sometimes it's because it's something they're interested in. It's completely separate from their work. But oftentimes they need to do some of that work during work hours. So how do we help Gen Z manage a side hustle? Because we can't be having them doing their side hustle when they're working for me right now, right? So we have to have some conversations, some communication about what can be done while you're here at work with me. What needs to be done outside of this office. Let's have those conversations. Side hustles aren't going away. Current statistics say about 50% of Gen Z either have a side hustle or see themselves having a side hustle because eventually that many want to be an entrepreneur. They're very entrepreneurship minded, and so they may be doing that to eventually move into that completely full-time one day. But some of them just want to do it because it's an interest they have. And it's a way to make extra money. But we need to find ways to manage that. And that's a little bit different in the workspace than perhaps we're used to. I don't know how many of you all have side hustles. If you're in a different generation and you have a side hustle too, it might be easier for you to recognize how we need to navigate that conversation. But if that's something that you're not familiar with, let's see if we can come together and negotiate what that's going to look like in the workspace. Think about what would happen if we created a way for them to do both and still get their work done here, but create some space for them to work their side hustle. What do you think that would do for their engagement in their job? Right? And so we got to think about, this really goes back to engagement, doesn't it? How do we keep our Gen Z engaged so that we can keep them? You know, interesting enough, we hear all the time that transitional jobs, people come and stay for 2 or 3 years and move on. That's kind of the statistics. But what Gen Z has said is actually they are interested in staying for organizations. Even a third of Gen Zers said they would stay in an organization for up to 10 years. Another 15% on top of that said they'd be willing to stay with an organization for 20 years if they were engaged in that organization. Engagement's going to look a little different for every person and every employee. But I sure would love to be able to keep employees longer term. If I have to work a little harder for engagement, I'm willing to do that. It's easier for me to engage the employees I have if I work at it than have to retrain a new employee every year or two. So I think it's important that we recognize these challenges. All right, so who is Gen Z? Let's kind of capture everything here. So the first one here is the values at work. Ownership, individuality, independence. We talked about each of those. They like to be independent workers. They like to be empowered to do their job and to do it well. They don't like the micromanagement. Their motivation is that job variety, remember the variety aspect, and creativity. Are there ways that they can level up in the job they have? Are there ways they can do multiple things? They can task switch. And can they be creative? Can they come up with new ideas and feel like they are valued there? What do they want from management? They want innovation and empowerment. We all want to know what we do matters, right? So can I be innovative? Can I be empowered to try new things, to come up with new ideas? Or am I just going to hear, we've not done it that way before? Gen Z, you're technically savvy, and you want their organizations to be too. Yet, as we've seen, they crave human interaction. They handle these devices easily. But what does it look like when they just want to come together and have some face-to-face, either with colleagues or with their supervisors? They crave that. So let's give them opportunities to do more of that. And finally, Gen Z sees their place of employment as their partner to make the world a better and prosperous place. I want you to think about this. This is the generation that mom and or dad or together would come and say, kids, where would you like to go for the family vacation? And they were able to give input into that, right? That conversation never happened when I was a youth. My parents would say, we're going to Colorado, we're going to Mexico, whatever the conversation. I was told where we were going on family vacations. Times have changed. And so our Gen Z and some of our later millennials are used to being able to give input into things like this. They want to partner with the organization too. And part of this is their social responsibility is very high. They want to know that their organization is valuing these things as much as they are. They want to partner with their organization for things like this because they're used to forming partnerships, whether it's with parents, friends, whatever it looks like, but they want to do things in partnership. That doesn't eliminate their independence, but they want to partner so we can be successful together. That's Gen Z as a whole.